spiritually speaking, I'm blind and deaf. I don't hear or see spirit at all. But I'm aware of them. And the constant reinforcement I get from doing this sort of work with people, for example. The people around me, as I'm walking down the street and going through the supermarket or whatever, are totally and blissfully unaware that a spirit world actually exists. But it's when you get situations like this, when a person is hearing voices, thinks they're going mad, and the rest of society thinks they're going mad, they can actually be driven mad. When the reality is they're more sensitive than the rest of us.
A lot of people are actively denying that there is any spiritual reality.
Yeah.
And that is the current paradigm, where all education, most of psychiatry, most of the medical world.
I think people are waking up. It's just a lot of people, they want to stay in the comfort zone. They don't want it to be interfered with.
Yeah, I find it odd as well, really, when you've got, I don't know, quite a large portion of the population of the planet is religious to one degree or another, and all those religions talk about spirit and entities and gods, and they all pray to a god that they've never ever seen. And yet when we talk about spirit or spirit problems with people mentally or any other way, society doesn't accept it.
Yeah.
The two don't go together at all, really, from my perspective.
Religions typically go through a phase where they move into a very sceptical sort of area, like in Christianity. God is Dead was the title of a famous book by Bishop John Robinson about 1963. I mean, there's a whole lot of the Christian church now, at least in the West, doesn't believe in God at all, certainly doesn't believe in spirits, doesn't believe there's anything beyond the material world.
Mm.
Yeah, they've all got churches with pictures of angels on their windows, probably.
Yeah, but that's because they're all historical legacies. They're like myths from the long past. I mean, they're not going to take the stained glass out because it looks nice. You know, and then the listed buildings people will be on their backs too. So doesn't mean to say they believe in any of that stuff.
What I'm really interested in now, and maybe it's a little early because you've only just been through an experience today that was new to you. But you told us earlier that you've been suffering from these intrusive voices for 20 years?
Yeah, it's a good 20 years.
And we just did some work today, and you've had a little bit of time to,
Yeah, there's no... I've been listening out for them, and it's kind of strange because I'm finding no intrusions at present, and there hasn't been for a good half an hour yet. And normally, in my day-to-day life, I get 2 or 3 comments made per minute. But for the past half an hour, I've been relatively... Well, it's just bizarre. It's like I'm steering the ship now.
Good. I'm just going to give you a little bit of a warning here. And this comes from a case that we dealt with quite recently, you and I. Can't remember the name of the person, but this particular characteristic of the case I've just been reminded of. The voices were removed, right? But then the person wanted to check and make sure they were gone. So invited them back to see what was happening.
Yeah, it was a spiritual young lad, wasn't it? He was quite telepathic. And he actually liked the concept of talking to voices, basically.
Yeah. So when we removed them, and then I wonder if I can get them back. And of course he invited them back, and of course they came back.
Yeah, different ones, but more voices.
Yeah. So there's a warning here. Don't test it. Don't invite them.
I don't want to. I'm conscious of that. I'm conscious of that. I don't want to.
Yes. Now you're gone. You're going to stay gone.
That's the hope.
Yeah. And also, it's, over time, as time goes by, you'll start to have the confidence that you are in fact yourself, and you feel better, and you've got more energy, and that's what makes a huge difference as well.
Because you've spent such a long time not having full control of your own life.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to take a little while to readjust to the fact that you have.
It's very dehumanising,
Yeah.
but even more dehumanising in many ways how the psychiatric services treat you. It's quite appalling, really.
Yeah, well, tell us more.
I was sectioned once on the bogus grounds where they had 11 armed policemen surround me and my family
Really?
and take me out of the car in front of my son. My son was 2 years old at the time, 1 year old. For a number of months afterwards, when I was eventually released, when I used to leave the house, he'd cry because he didn't think I was coming back because of what the police did.
Repercussions.
And that's all simply because I wasn't taking the medication. I'd made no threats to anyone. I was conducting myself generally okay. We're getting a holiday for my wife and child back to South Africa while I looked for a new house for us to stay in. That was the plan. Then 11 armed policemen. Another sad fact in all of this is a lot of people suffer mental health because of injuries sustained in childhood mentally. I'm no exception to that. And society, they cover it up. And you know, I think some of us are aware of the film Girl Interrupted and films like that. These things happen where people have their children as they grow older, and the children start demonstrating problems that they have because of what they've suffered in childhood. Quite often the parents will have them sectioned. And it's not just make-believe, it's not just a script written for Hollywood, this actually happens. And the psychiatric services go along with it. And there's many people that are there who have been sectioned, who are probably very decent human beings, but they are made to look as if they are rejected by society. And it's not. A lot of it stems from problems that occur during childhood.
But what I want to focus on now is having experienced. What advice would you give to someone who was experiencing similar to what you had?
I got in my arsenal every kind of tool I could get from people like the Warrior Program, NLP. I've tried everything, and the voices have always been there. No matter what medication I've been on, Clopixol injections, Dipixel injections, olanzapine, stelazine, aripiprazole, risperidone, I've been on a lot. The voices have always been there. But for the past half an hour, after what we've gone through here, I don't feel any intrusions for the first time in about 20 years. I feel quite upset about that because I've been suffering so long, and if there are these therapies that are out there, you have to grab them. You've got to grab them, because the way the system and the state makes you feel, what it makes other people believe of you with institutionalization, does nothing but make you feel a low quality human being. And that's appalling, because we consider ourselves the modern world, and we're not. We are modern when we encompass things like what we've done here today, not through archaic philosophies, draconian ways of institutionalization. It's not working. It's obvious. So if you can get these therapies, give them a go. They're on offer. Seek them out. That's what I'd say. And I'm saying
We've got someone else here today who has experienced, and what we've not demonstrated today is the remote method, where we work on behalf of someone who's not in our immediate presence, right? Remote spirit release therapy. Has anyone got anything to say about that?
Well, I've got experience with my son, he's 23 years old, and he's having mental health probably the last 5 years, and he's been diagnosed with psychosis. And last September, he was detained under the Mental Health Act as well for treatment. And I was quite shocked and realized how dehumanized is the mental health service and the psychiatrists, the way they treat people. When he was in a hospital, then when I contact Dr. Palmer and Andrew for work, before that, the day, my son was completely doped with the medication. He was presenting very aggressive. He's never been violent. He's to nature, he's very kind and polite young man. But since he's having his mental health problem, he started to get very aggressive, verbally aggressive. And the way they treat them is just like suppress the symptoms they had, a lot of medication. And my son, when he was to a psychiatric intensive unit, the only things they gave him was like a lot of medication for him to calm him down. And one day he was completely, he didn't respond. He wasn't even talking. He was nearly 3 days, probably said 1 or 2 words. He didn't manage to talk. He didn't manage to walk properly because of the medication. And then Dr. Palmer and Andy did a remote spirit release work. And what amazed me was the following day, he was another person. He was calm, he was smiling, he started sleeping, because till then he was just sleeping because of the medication. He was still at the hospital. The psychiatrist, because they changed medication the same day, and of course they take all the credit about the new medication, but I cannot believe that they changed the medication one day, he's going to change so much the way he did. Yeah, and I think as a mother, as a parent, I think the work is done through Dr. Palmer and Andy also opened my eyes about, because sometimes you are so dependent of all the word the psychiatrists tell you what to do and the way it is, and you just see the illness on a person and you want just to get the illness out, and you forget that there's a person behind that. There's a person that probably they have other way to see things. And the way my son changed since the work, really, was till now, he's out of the hospital. He's been at home now for 2 months, and he's still doing well. I still take medication, but much less than he used to. But he hasn't shown any sign of be aggressive there he was before. He was very calm. But I think the point you put about how dehumanized is the psychiatric service, I think that is a big thing. Is, for me, the shock was how they disconnect the person to the medication. They just see the illness and the medication, and they don't see the person. They don't see, what is. Yeah,
that's true a lot. Not just in psychiatry. There is a big thing in modern society where we believe that objectivity and I can't even say the word, but objectivity is the ultimate supreme being of where we should be. But we're emotional beings, we are subjective
and
people.
that's exactly,
But the medical professions and other quarters of society, such as judiciary, etc., the law, they like to think they're elite and they put themselves out as being objective about things. But that disassociates them from any kind of human input, and it's wrong. It's wrong. We're each and every one of us emotional beings. We're each and every one of us.
And that is the basic things of a human, isn't it? Just that is what they forget about it. They forget that people that there's emotion, there's that, they're feeling, and and they just suppress more and more and more. Just to tick boxes that they are treating someone.
Did you say you contacted Terry?
Yes.
Yeah, well, at least you belong to those that do care for the children. Because there's a lot of people in Western society, if their children fall ill, of mental ill health issues.
And the point is, my son has been treating with the psychiatrist for the last 5 years. And the point was, he was deteriorating more and more and more. This wasn't improving. He started improving after contact Dr. Terry.
Yeah, good.
Significant improvement. So for me, even if I knew, didn't know much about the spirit relays, is the changes and just tell me something, and it just does really tell me something about it.
And I think it's important to point out as well that you and I have never met before today. Our communication has been by email. We didn't even speak on the telephone, did we?
No, just through emails.
You just sent email and asked if we can help. And I just needed some details about your son, his age and so on. And we did the work, didn't we, remotely? There are serious researchers who spend an awful lot of time and energy, and they receive funding from, they're very fortunate that their research is financed and supported, researching into the nature of consciousness. Consciousness studies has become a very, very fashionable area of research. And you have a lot of organisations that are set up purporting to be investigating spirituality and so on. And you have people who are serious about researching what they call paranormal. You have ghost hunters. And they're all out there looking for their particular piece of evidence to support the theory that spirits exist after death. There's a huge amount of activity going on out there in these fields. And we've discovered recently that people who are using electronic voice phenomena, experiments and devices to capture spirit voices on technology, it's become a huge plaything. And they're easily available on the internet, free, and you can use them on your mobile phone and invite spirits to talk to you by phone. And we're now beginning to see the dangers of that, where people invite spirits to talk to them in much the same way that people used to do, and perhaps still do, I think, with the Ouija board. You open yourself up to these spirit entities. They come in and they take over and they inflict serious harm, and they can cause long-term serious mental and emotional damage. And this is all through, and I'm sorry, but I can't help using the word, through stupidity and ignorance. And a message that was given to us recently by a very, very old and ancient demonic entity goes all the way back beyond Egyptian times, back to Sumerian times. And this demon that exists and was attached to a person was attracted through EVP experimentation. And this entity said, you can't get rid of me, I'm too powerful, you're just not strong enough, but I will go at my own free will. And as it was leaving, it imparted some very, very valuable information to us. And it said, your kind are like children playing in a pool that's full of crocodiles. You just do not know the danger that you're playing with. So here's a very, very serious message from a demonic entity. And we thanked it, didn't we?
Yeah, it was very friendly, actually.
It was very friendly.
Yeah.
But it does what it does because that's what it does. And they exist, and this has existed for thousands of years. Thousands of years in our time, in our way of measuring time, but in the spiritual realms, time and space do not exist. There is no time. So when we're working with your son at a distance in our physical time and space, right? We're talking about remote at a distance, but in reality, there is no time and space. So when Andrew and I connect with the spiritual essence of your son, it is beyond time and space. And the entities that interfere with him, and those voices that interfered with you, are beyond time and space.
One thing that was amazing, because I gave very little information about my son. I think the only information I had given to you was that he's been diagnosed as being in the autistic spectrum when he was about 16.
Yes.
And then he was diagnosed with psychosis, and I think you asked about the medications taking. I think probably.
Yeah, I need
that
to know
was
the
solved,
medication
yes.
because I need to print off a list of consequences.
But when Andy was talking to Chen, they identified that one of the negative entity my son had was in his throat, through the chakra in his throat. And I remember, and then he's saying that probably he had some speech impairment. And I didn't give you this information.
You didn't give us that
and my
information.
son, my son always being treated with speech impairment. That was the first symptoms he had. I think he was about 2-3 years old.
And we didn't know that.
I didn't know that. And when you release a negative entity, my son he's always he still stammers a bit, but he's what I feel is much more connected to his own way of communicate, express himself than he used to be. Yeah, it's quite subtle, but I can feel the difference. I can feel things like it's more
More in control.
more in control. Yes, more like self-confident about how to express it, which still with difficulties, because that is been his condition since he was probably born. But that was very, very interesting. Probably all his problems been through his life
But that is
originated from that.
evidence. You're providing us with evidence insofar as there is a difference between what was before and what is now after the intervention. What you're reporting today in a very, very short time is that there is a difference. Before you were hearing voices. Are you still hearing voices?
No intrusion so far, but I'll give it a good couple of weeks.
Okay. So the feedback I'm getting is
Yeah, I'll make sure I'll get some feedback to you.
the voices are not there.
At the moment, no.
Now to me that's evidence.
Yeah.
Okay, so whilst your parapsychologists and your EVPers and your ghost hunters are going out on their excursions, disturbing the spirits in a sense of fun, right, to collect evidence about the survival of life after death, are not really taking it very seriously, this is serious. Because this is evidence that spirits do exist. It's evidence that they can be very, very dangerous, and they can cause distress and sickness, which is reinforced and prolonged and exaggerated by so-called health services that either intentionally or in ignorance really don't know what they're doing. It's a serious business, isn't it? And it's a serious business.
It's not necessarily the doctors and nurses on the ground. It's the way they've been institutionalised to think in a particular way. I think when we mentioned it earlier, there are policy makers at the oppressed arms of society that may...
And of course, there's a lot of money to be made out of antipsychotic medication.